Hello.
Thank you so much for coming. Hope everyone is good. I guess we should probably kick off where it all began and give a little bit about our backgrounds. Who wants to start?
In a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, literally.
So I've been around for a long time. I've been DJing for 27 years now. I started in 97. My first quote-unquote industry job was in a record shop after I dropped out of university. I was only there for one term. But it was in South Wales and there was no jungle. I think we went to like 2 jungle and D&B events in the whole 3 or 4 months that I was there. I missed going out so much. I dropped out, came back home, got a job in a record shop not that long after, and I'd already been collecting vinyl for maybe a couple of years before that. So my main catalyst for me to start buying vinyl and thinking about starting to learn how to mix was seeing Chemistry and Storm play for the first time in 95. I'd already been listening to the music for a few years by that point, taping pirate radio, listening to a show called The House That Jack Built on Kiss FM, presented by a DJ called Steve Jackson. So it was like the 4/4 tunes mixing with the early breakbeat hardcore, watching Top of the Pops every week, seeing the big dance acts of that time. Yeah, so I was kind of always into it, and then from around the age of 14, some boys that I was friends with in my area had started putting on their own parties, DJing at other people's parties, so I was around young people DJing as well, but it wasn't until I saw Kemi and Jane play that I thought, okay, maybe I can have a go at this as well, it looks fun. So fast forward to 97, and I'd actually started getting to know them quite well, just through going to Blue Note, and while I was at uni, this has turned into a really long story, but
No.
My connection with Chemistry and Storm was very tight, and they basically gave me my first big break as well, which we'll come to in a little while. But from 97, was working in a record shop, then I worked at a PR company part-time for a year, built up my connections, started pirate radio that year as well. I'd literally only been playing mixing for a few months at that point. Had my first play out later that year, so I'd been playing less than a year and had my first gig.
It's so interesting to see all the different places and parts that have allowed for you to, have your first DJ set, meet obviously Kemi and Jane. What was it like when you first saw them play?
They blew my mind and took my head off because, so it was a night called Innovation, run by a promoter called Funky, who runs Moondance as well. And they were doing a London club tour, so they had 5 different innovations. And I'd heard of them, but I didn't know what they looked like, because in this time there was very little music media that was covering jungle and drum and bass. Like some of the big magazines that are still going now, they weren't giving us any time, they weren't giving the music much time. So really, a lot of artists you found out what they looked like when you saw them in the flesh, when you saw them playing, or
100%.
if you just happened to be somewhere and someone pointed them out.
What were the streets saying about Chemistry and Storm?
Well, so the same promoter, Funky, used to run the Hardcore Dance Awards once a year, and I remember seeing their name on the flyer. So it was like all the categories, and then best female DJ was either DJ Rap or them. And Rap was my favourite for a while. Obviously, there were very few women DJing then. I'd heard of Tamsin and Daisy, but I had never seen them. We knew that they were part of Metalheads when it first started, and then when we started going to Blue Note, and I used to follow them around London when they were playing, and they started calling me their number one fan. And I became friends with them. But they just completely took my head off the first time I saw them, because they looked different. It was 2 women. One woman was black, light-skinned, she had bleached locks. So obviously I saw, it was before I had locks as well, and I saw a familiarity there. 2 women together, they looked nice. The way they carried themselves behind the decks and the way they carried themselves in the club was just very different. And the tunes were completely different as well. So they really stood out. And I remember one of the guys I was out with that night, he tapped me on the shoulder because I was just standing watching them play. And he said, that'll be you in 5 years' time. And it literally was in less time. So I think we can talk about this as well. I think there's a lot to say about how we all kind of place ourselves. And part of it is luck, and a lot of it is networking and connections and friendships you make. But I think there's a lot we kind of put ourselves in the right places and the right situations
100%.
Without realizing.
I feel like that's a really good segue for me, because I feel that my journey into music came from being like a really obsessive fan to a point where when I was lucky to have iPod Classic, I'd fill it up with all different sounds, genres, music, you name it.
Where would you get the tunes from?
LimeWire, obviously. LimeWire, obviously. Which, you know, I'm 31 now, and it made a lot of sense for my generation that we just would rip all of these tunes. So it's like having this back catalogue of music to listen to and then really define what your sound is. My sister got me a lot into R&B, hip-hop, Aaliyah, Brandy, SWV, you name it. And, you know, that was her sound. My mum with the dancehall, winding up her waist to Beanie Man, Sim Simmer, which was disturbing for me to watch when I was younger, but now I feel like it's really good memories for me to have now. But when I was, you know, really young, I had VH1 and MTV to watch. So I would be enamored, but also scared of The Prodigy, seeing Firestarter for the first time, or genuinely thinking actually Daft Punk was a cartoon because of the Discovery album in 2001, and watching Digital Love on the TV. So like all of my musical experiences came from that, then to LimeWire, then to being fortunate enough that I was able to save some money for a laptop to get virtual DJ, but cracked, because again...
How did you know to pick that up, though? Like
to crack virtual DJ, I don't know.
Yeah, who told you about virtual DJ?
I just found it online, I guess. I was reading a lot of music magazine like stuff online, so whether it be Mix Mag or DJ Mag, I was doing that. Found, virtual DJ, I guess, through one of them. Then found a cracked version. Really sorry, by the way, because obviously I would love to buy this, but I had no money. And, you know, having that cracked version of virtual DJ, or the trial version, I would go and DJ with that at parties, using my all the stuff I would have on my iTunes. And then I was building playlists. And a lot of the stuff I was DJing at first was future garage stuff. A lot of Night Slugs, all this kind of, sounds. And then eventually slowly got into footwork, but always had a love for jungle. Because when I was, my first early musical memory is listening to jungle in the car with my like uncle and like my mum and sister. And my favourite song comes from that memory of, Omi Trio, Renegade Snares, Foul Play remix. So, yeah, it's an interesting one for me. It was a lot of like DJing at friends' parties to then eventually being, I want to be close to music. What am I going to do? I'm going to start a blog. So I started a blog with a friend who wanted to have a fashion section, and I dealt with the music section. And I would email people profusely to try and get into festivals. I'd be emailing, and I did. I actually ended up getting to these festivals. I'd interview people, embarrassingly asking, like, Rosca, who do you prefer, Rosca or Mosca? And it obviously went down like a sack of shit, right? And I've met him since. He's like, obviously, he's a really lovely guy, but, you don't realise those things, and it's just really stupid. My love for Subtract, rushing off to see him, but then missed him because I went to do these interviews. And I just wanted to be really close to music. And I guess my general love and excitement for it forced me into certain spaces through being in interviews and talking so much about music that people would just give me the job, like the internship. This happened with an internship I did at Shazam, where they were like, I don't think she knows anything about what she's about to do, but she has lots of passion. We'll give it to her. And then I was fortunate enough to meet, because I've just seen him walk in, Seb, Seb Wheeler, of former Mixmag, and also Duncan is here as well, of former Mixmag. I used to work at Mixmag, doing an internship there. And because of my love for music, and very specifically different types of music, I was able to work alongside Seb, work alongside Duncan, and be able to... Footwork is amazing, jungle is amazing, and they listened to that. So, yeah, that's how I got into music. And then the DJing thing found me because of Boiler Room. I wasn't expecting that to go off. And those are like my early days between, 2015 to 19, I would say. It was all very quick extension. It was like very quick.
Yeah, the same with me as well.
Yeah.
Things happened really fast.
Yeah.
But I think when you become so obsessive and you're around other people that are really obsessed and passionate about it as well, it's like you just want to do anything you can, like you said, to be around it, and just it becomes all consuming, and you're very tunnel vision about it as well. Like nothing else matters. What ages were you when you started playing at people's parties on Virtual DJ, and like then moving into your blog era and things after that? Were there many other young women around doing like similar things?
If we're going from Virtual DJ, blog era, Virtual DJ era are like quite closely linked. So that would have been from like 16 to 18, 19. I used to co-run a blog with a friend of mine called Elizabeth, which we would call Puddicombe, because that's her surname. So me and Puddicombe would do that together, and she had her own blog called Swallow Our Words. And then my one that I eventually did after her was called Influx, with 3 X's. It was crazy. I don't know why I named it that, but Triple X. Yeah, Triple X. That was just solely focused. I was just looking after the music side of things. That section is very quick, as you can see by how many years. And then after that, going into radio, because that's basically the jump, and getting closer to more people like me was Represent Radio. And I was looking at the likes of Amartha via Radio 1, Naina, obviously, via Represent, but now Apple Music. And there was just a plethora, actually, of like a lot of amazing women. And I ended up, which we'll get onto, I guess, coming up with amazing women in that field as well. Represent was a big part for me because, that's a station based out in South London, in Brixton. Come on. Yes. Come on, South. I'm actually from East London, so I'm not going to join in. But I get it. It's a very nice place. Very nice place. And Represent Radio was a big hub at the time for new talent coming through, and also doing different things, not just the usual. Not the usual dance side of things of like just house and techno. There was like other and genres within that they really wanted to support as well, providing it had a UK scope, basically. Yeah. And you, obviously. Let's talk about radio.
Yeah. So obviously I already mentioned that I was listening to radio all the time. Like when you're underage, when you can't go out to many clubs or raves. Although I did used to go to an under 18s night in Streatham, a club called Ritzy. On a Sunday, they used to have a thing called Club 2000, and I saw SL2 do a PA there. Who else? But they used to play things like The Prodigy, a lot of the tunes that were getting into the charts at the time. 1 week, Praga Khan was supposed to do a PA, but they missed their flight or something, so Aphex Twin stepped in, and it was really mad because we were 14. I don't think many people there had heard of him, and he cleared the dance floor in the quickest time I've ever seen in my life. But it was really deep banging 4/4 sparse music, and we weren't ready for it because we were expecting to hear this hardcore ravey music. But with radio, so at the same time as that, being obsessed with radio, listening to it in my bedroom all the time, kind of as an escape, supposed to be doing homework, but listening out to tunes and recording my favorite ones, pressing pause, record, pause, record, pause. It had always been there for me, and it's probably not been until more recent years, that I've realised like how big and important a thing it has been for me throughout my journey, and I guess my legacy as well. From starting on pirate radio in '97 on Flex FM, pirate station that was based around South London. They would move around different flats. Sometimes there would be scary dogs there. It was just like pretty much mixing in people's bedrooms or living room or kitchen sometimes. I played on Rinse in the late 90s, but I was first on a station between Flex and Rinse. I was on a station called Pressure FM that Stamina MC brought me up to. And after a little while, they joined forces with Rinse, because at the time, Rinse were just playing garage and house, and Pressure were playing jungle and drum and bass, and so they joined and became a big Rinse FM. I've known Genius from like 98, 99 times as well. But it was very different for me because I think at that time I was the only young woman playing on the station. I'm not sure about Flex. I think there were a few other women, but mainly playing garage at that time. It's an interesting one, because obviously a lot of people ask, or at least point this out, that in the world of community and, what is it like to be a woman in the industry, or that kind of question. Did you even notice? Obviously you would notice, but was it even I did, but again, like being so tunnel vision about the music and having fun and enjoying what I was doing, I didn't really pay that much attention to it unless something happened where someone was like very disrespectful or making a snarky comment, things like that. I tell you, with Rinse, there was one problem. One of the studios that they used was in this kind of treehouse cabin on an estate near Bromley-by-Bow Tube, and there was no toilet. So it was all right for the guys, because you would just see like horrible bottles thrown outside with wee in and stuff like that, or they could just go outside behind a tree. But for me, like, I literally was the only woman playing on the station then.
The smell must have been crazy.
Outside, yeah, it was horrible, and there
crazy
were feral cats and kittens running around. But so those kind of things, they were never really thought about, because I guess a lot of the stations didn't have many women playing on them in those times, or if they did, I don't know, they might have been in the same situation as me, go to toilet at Victoria Station and then hold it until the 2 hours are up.
No, I actually have no shame. You will find me behind the back of a car if I need to pee. And I will look you dead in the eye as well if you decide to make me feel awkward for squatting down. I was going to say, I think it's really a good point to mention as well that you're a very important figure within, radio, in the sense of, you were the first woman to host a national drum and bass show, The Next Chapter, via One Extra, which is just huge, on the basis of which is something I think we'll talk about a little bit later, but occupying a space within, for instance, like the corporation of obviously like the BBC, I definitely know, hand on heart, that through obviously your contribution with your show, that it's made it a lot easier for myself to have obviously my own show there, or even do, say for instance, the residencies for Radio 1 back in the day. How was that for you when you were called up into One Extra, and how important would you say that also was for the scene? Because you were sharing space obviously with also amazing people like Fabian Grooverider as well. Yeah. But we didn't often see Radio 1 people, because where it was on Great Portland Street, we were up on the 3rd floor with One Extra, and Radio 1 was ground floor and 1st floor, and there wasn't really as much mixing going on then as there is now, innit? Yeah.
Like you see everybody. I bumped into you when I was up there the other week. It was a really mad experience actually, because there'd been like whispers and rumours about this new digital station that was being started by the BBC, but everyone was like, well, what's digital? We don't really know what that means, because we were all used to FM and MW and like just...
What's MW?
It's like medium wave. I don't know what stations you get on there, but maybe... Oh. Does anyone in here know medium wave?
Anyone?
Radio? Yeah. Yeah. There you go, 5 Live.
Oh, look it up. Yeah.
So it's different analog channels, basically.
Ah, okay.
You just scroll through the radio dial, if you had one. No, obviously not. Yeah, so it was like we didn't really know what was happening, and then I was brought on quite late, and they already had El Double doing like the flagship D&B show,
Yeah.
and Bailey on board, and then a mixed DJ. But yeah, at first there was 11 hours of drum and bass being broadcast every week on 1Extra, plus tunes hitting the daytime playlists, and then odd shows here and there as well. So what we did for the music was really something quite special, and I don't think that period of time and 1Extra itself gets enough credit for it. Possibly because it's a black music station, possibly because we weren't the biggest names. There's probably a myriad of different reasons, but it was really incredible what we did as a team and the different cities and areas that we hit during our extra bass tour that happened yearly. And in terms of our own profiles, it kind of just sent us into the stratosphere for a while.
How do you feel like touching upon legacy like that is important? Because I think with what you've just said, it is a very important moment in history, but yet where's a documentary about it? Where's like a full-blown...
They did make a 1Extra documentary for their 20th anniversary, but there was no drum and bass in it. I was like, yeah, thanks guys. Yeah, because
it's a common misconception, obviously, of the genre within jungle and drum and bass not having, or at least people understanding the background of it. You know, where it comes from, how many people are within the scene. There are quite a lot of people within the communities, our shared communities especially, who have contributed to this. But then it isn't per se, something that is shown or spoken about more. You've done a lot of work, obviously, to touch upon this, talking about the Windrush generation. How is it in terms of researching that and then almost relaying it back to this?
Windrush stories?
Yeah.
I loved it because there were obviously a lot of similar threads through everyone's stories, and it was nice hearing about their upbringings and their childhoods, where their parents came from, like obviously very similar to my dad and my grandmother, who both came over from Jamaica. My grandmother came over first in the late 50s, I think. She worked for the NHS as a nurse, and then she sent for my dad when he was 14 in 1967. They're both no longer with us, unfortunately, so I did record an episode with him, but I wanted to record like another 1 or 2 episodes because there was so much that we didn't cover. So it was really nice, as I said, like hearing the similar threads, but it was also heartbreaking as well, just knowing that so many people that were invited here to Britain, to the UK, just largely didn't have a very good time. Like, they made their way, they made lives for themselves, made careers, bought houses when they were able to, brought all of this culture, language, food, style, fashion, and changed the face of UK society, but was still not seen as like British citizens, and not treated nicely. So yeah, it was really heavy making that, because series 1 I made at the same time as the Black Lives Matter uprising. So when George Floyd was murdered, and yeah, there were a lot of protests and things were getting heated again. So yeah, it was like doubly heavy in that regard. But I think throughout what I've done, maybe since the beginning, and I think you're the same as well, is like we reference what came before, because I'm a strong believer that you should respect the origins and the foundations, because without those people doing what they were doing, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So as well as obviously looking to the future and supporting new names, new artists, new producers, DJs, supporting things that are progressive, that are like taking the music forward and the culture forward, but also you have to pay homage to those that came before. And yeah, so that's the combination there is like with Windrush stories and musically.
I definitely
they're
agree.
one and the same.
Yeah, because I think it's, are we seeing that common thread now in music, where people are referring back to things and actually maybe making stuff which has that kind of common thread? I think that question can be quite an open one, because I know for a fact, like you said, yeah, we do constantly refer back to things. I guess we can talk about like production in this realm. I know for me that it is super important to have those kind of lineages in there.
You can hear it on your album. And congratulations on releasing your debut album, by the way.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it was super important to have that. And I think given everything that I had listened to when I was younger, like all the way from like my sister Charmaine, all the way to now, it had to basically be reference to. It would be, kind of a shame not to. I think also I felt maybe a lot of pressure to make an archetypal rave album, right? And it didn't really make sense. I think some of the sounds for WAV or With a Vengeance is supposed to reference a lot of R&B, mixed in with then RNG, which is obviously a newer genre within, grime and stuff. It's supposed to reference footwork. It's supposed to obviously have jungle elements, drum and bass elements, all this kind of stuff. And it's important to do so, because I want, if anyone, is going to listen to the album, or for those who maybe have, hopefully you will hear all of those things. It would be just such a shame to just make the one note when there's so much there to, explore. I feel like, with you as well, you obviously feel the same way, and you always want to push things forward, especially even with like recent releases via your own label with Nectax, proves that it's supposed to add to the scene and like the current thread that we've got going on, which we've got a lot more freedom to do. For you, how do you feel about, your own production style, but then also how that affects your label?
Well, I haven't really done much production. So my first releases were like in the mid-noughties, 20 years ago. I worked with Breakage. We had a pseudonym called Alias, very original, I know. And yeah, we had some tunes out. So our first tune came out on, the first one we made together came out on Critical on a split 12 with one of his own tunes on the other side. Doc Scott put one out on 31 on a mixed artist EP, Kings of the Rollers, Volume 4, I think it was. We had some stuff out on Bassbin, which was one of my favourite labels from Ireland as well. Rohan put out wicked stuff on there. Then there's been a couple of like collabs with Crags and Parallel Forces under their original name, and then again with Battery more recently, a few years ago, I think that came out. But yeah, I've never really had the patience to sit in front of a computer screen and learn everything by myself. Like, I know how to arrange, that's easy. When I was going to the studio with Breakage, I would bring some samples, like a bunch of CDs or vinyl. We'd go through them. I'd say, I want to use this. What do you think? I'd hum a bass line. He'd do all the engineering, sitting at the computer. But it would be a collaboration because, like, I'm kind of directing him how to do things. So, yeah, I wouldn't call myself a producer at all. I've just made some tunes, and some people liked them. But I guess the production kind of led later into me becoming a radio producer, not just a presenter, because I love editing things and making them sound nice and smooth. Yeah, I just never had the patience. But with you and your album, can you talk a little bit about the process? Because for me, when I listen to it, I can hear a lot of the influence that you just mentioned, but footwork is like very at the forefront, like with the way you arrange the tunes. So yeah, can you talk a little bit about the process and how, or if you do see producing different to the way you DJ, and then maybe how you present radio as well? Like, is there a thread that links all of them, or do you see them as like completely different pursuits?
This is a really good question. Right. It's almost I have to answer this in a way of I DJ'd or started DJing because I didn't know how to, again, crack production stuff. So then I was like, okay, I'll go into DJing because I really want to be close to music. Then DJ'd for a long time. COVID happened, whereby no one was able to work, but I was thankful for that time off. Then learned how to produce. LCY/LCN taught me how to do so through their knowledge and use of Logic, and left me to my own devices, did that, released something, because I was like, similar vibes actually of like, I don't really have the patience for it, but I'm gonna go for it. But I just did it, and I think I released a few tunes, like singles, but never really had the time to sit there with them because I wasn't really given the time to do so. People had me preoccupied with DJing and making them guap, and then I feel like...
Really, that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, it depends if I get to have the guap myself. But I feel like, because I was preoccupied with gigs, and also just like mentally not even in the headspace to be able to make music, I made time to do so recently. And that process is very different from DJing because it's very much you. You can play a person's tune and put everything together because you have that detachment from it. But when it's yours, the attachment is very much there. Therefore, when it is going to go next to someone else's tune, it better come correct. And I rather not even play my own tunes, actually. I'd rather play other people's tunes than force my tune in, if that makes sense. I've got a weird, uncomfortable... Yeah,
Why would it be forcing, though?
It just feels uncomfortable. If the space is there to play it, I will play it. But I never want to just drop my tune in. If something feels really off. And I feel like it's probably because of DJing for so long that I've not... There's a massive disconnect, almost. And I think the way I even go about doing sets and stuff, all the tunes have to make sense with each other. So, like, even playing stuff of the album, actually, luckily there are tunes that make a lot of sense to just drop in because they make sense for that mood, that moment. But I couldn't... Yeah, my first release, I genuinely couldn't find sometimes places to play it. One, because I didn't make it DJ mixable. I'm working on that. And then two, I just didn't fancy it. So I do see the kind of art of each of them very different from one another. Because DJing is a very vulnerable thing. You're up there,
It's instant.
It's very instant, basically. Whereas when you're playing a tune in front of someone, you're not really supposed to care what they think, but you do. And then, like, you're watching people either dance to it or not dance to it, and then you walk away going, is that tune shit? Or, like, it's just, there's so many thoughts and feelings that go into this. So I think for me,
especially with something that you've spent so many hours, days,
100%.
sometimes months on. I
also try to remove myself a lot from the album process of making With a Vengeance because I would just spend a day making tunes. I've got my manager here in front of me, and I would literally just literally drop the tune into the WhatsApp group and be like, I've made this today. And then that was it. And then I would then keep going and keep, I've made this today. And it would just present. And then eventually, through having the freedom, luckily through management, to be like, okay, go off and sequenced the order of them. And we spent time together listening to that and agreeing that this is the order it is. So I think, for me, production has to be like a very open space where you can kind of do anything. And you have to also feel the support of that. DJing, you can kind of go and do your own thing. If you know you're going to shower down a set, you'll go and do that because you've got the confidence to do that. But production takes a lot of time, I think a lot of nurturing. And you're right, that patience level of doing that, and very much that, and sitting there for hours, going over a loop, and you think you've gone mad. It's giving mental health. It's like sometimes you're like in front of stuff. So, I don't know. Yeah, very, very different styles, but I'm enjoying it, and I'm more leaning into the production stuff a lot more, because I think it's actually, to be honest with you, given me more love back for DJing, mainly because I think I found myself in a place observing things and maybe not being the biggest fans of how sometimes things have gone or how sounds have gone. And this is just coming from the approach of like making sure that music obviously always carries back to legacy and always carries back to the importance of what you're making and what you're doing. So it's a shame when you may feel that people might be making stuff just to continue DJ bookings or continue festival bookings. You should never be making tunes just to do that. Tunes are there for people to... The moment you start doing that, then welcome to the business of music.
Do you think, so off the back of that, do you think that there are enough people trying to make their way within music now who are making music because they have to get it out of their system? Or do you think it's become, because the industry and different scenes are like so set into British life now, do you think it's just become another stepping stone in, like Elijah talks about with his Yellow Squares?
100%, yeah.
And where he says that just because something's been done a certain way for a long time doesn't mean to say you have to do it that way.
100%. I mean,
but people still seem to be following this
some sort of step. It's a shame. I think, to touch on this like in a really short way, there is so much bad things that are going on in the world at the moment that we really do need music to be like the one emotional thing that we can have to actually be like genuine. So the moment that you don't make genuine music, then of course everything else around you is just not going to be genuine and not going to be good. So therefore, you know, if you're going to make music that's like for the gamification of like DJing and you're just there to get to a stepping stone, then your audience are going to reflect that. And I think that's such a shame, because if we're trying to, you know, continue community and have a community, a good community that looks after everyone, then that's not really, unfortunately, going to carry on, because, again, like the moment you're making music to continue festival bookings or to do stuff, then you're not challenging yourself, basically, to add further to the music industry itself. So I hope that people kind of break away from that, or if you do notice that happening, you stay away from those people. Money isn't everything. I know the tax man is a very horrible person, but it genuinely isn't everything.
There's no tax to pay if there's
money is a form of genuinely some form of religion, and it's like it's not a good one. So why follow that when you could make something that's actually genuine?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry.
I think there's no longevity in that either.
No.
Like, you're not going to be around for as long as you hope to be if
you can't take it with you either.
Yeah, if you're not moving and acting in a very authentic manner, like if you're not being true to yourself and who you are and what you're really into, where your passions lie, keeping some integrity about what you do and who you are and who you kind of associate with as well, that will take you a lot further. And being consistent, like you quite often see people kind of flip-flopping around between different sound styles, following whatever's trendy. And I think that's what I try and tell people if I'm ever asked that question, is like, well, how do you sustain a really long career? One, you have to be prepared to work your arse off constantly, but you have to be consistent. And one way of being consistent is fully supporting like the same artists that you might have grown up with, but still supporting them like after 10, 15 years.
100%.
Also, being consistent with your support of newer people, giving them space to come in and do their thing. What do you think of that? Because you've been around for a while now. Like, where do you see yourself, or where do you hope to see yourself in the next 5, 10 years?
It's quite an interesting one, actually. I feel like I still want to continue what I'm doing. I think I'm gonna, because I've seen the bad side of when money becomes the most important thing, that then you feel the raft of being fucked over. So because I've had that, now I want to protect younger people from going through that. And I feel like I just want to now be some form of like soundboard for younger people to chat to. So, and if I clock someone's doing really well and stuff, I'll give them lots of advice. I'll take the time out to do that. And I think anything I can do to support people, beautiful, and it's an example of an initiative that I have that runs free studio space for Black and queer artists alike for free. You can just come in, use a studio. I want you to save money. I want that to continue to grow. And yeah, just constantly, I think it's just reminding people of that. Yeah, like the monetary stuff and like the money has a religion and trying to get to certain places and not making music for genuine cause. We don't need any more of that. I think at this time now we really need genuine, thought-provoking things that make people feel things, because at the moment, you know, with scrolling all the time on Instagram and stuff like that, where the mind is just not thinking, feeling. And I don't want our scene. Not that it would ever do that anyway, because jungle and drum and bass, you feel so much from it. It's coming like mostly here on the low end and stuff. So I don't want that to be affected. This little nice subculture that we've got. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, I was going to say, like, what you've done with Beautiful is really incredible, and congratulations with all that. Obviously, I've got something quite similar with EQ50. I've got to big up Chickaboo in the audience.
Come on.
One of our other EQ50 crew. That, and so, like, referencing, talking about community and the collective as well. Starting EQ50, I think it's fair to say that it kind of saved the few of us that run it. We started doing, like, small events for women to come down, learn DJ skills, learn how to start producing, how to put on events. In 2018, late 2018, we started. We launched the first year of our mentorship program in 2020 during COVID lockdowns. And just to see the difference that has happened between when we first started to now, how many more women there are, how many more queer people are coming through, how many more non-binary people. It's really amazing to think that it's very humbling. I don't like using the word humble very often, but it's very humbling to think that we've played quite a large part in that.
Well, I was going to say you've definitely played a large part via like near archives, because she came through obviously on the program as well, and there's countless other of obviously amazing artists. And that's really important to see, you know, where she's gone to.
I think, well, Nia's like an anomaly anyway. She was always going to be huge.
Oh, 100%.
She was always going to be a big star, but when we kind of became aware of her, and she's spoken about it in interviews before, that she used £500 of her student loan money to pay for some adverts on Instagram, and that must have been how a lot of us first came across her, because we were like, hold on, who's this girl, like, with these different tunes? Like, there's something about her. And then she applied for the mentorship program. We were like, wow, we need to pair her up with V. It would be the perfect combination. And so, we worked with her for a year. I was her mentor for a year. And obviously, we've stayed kind of in touch after that. She books me at loads of her Up Your Archives events. So it's kind of that like we're doing now, that intergenerational connection. I love the fact that she's always referencing like old school, and she loves the culture and the music and the history where it's all come from. And it's great to see lots more younger people on that same tip. But yeah, in terms of like as a collective, I think, would you say it's fair to say, Boo, that we just became so much closer running EQ50 as a crew, whereas like, Boo's been around even longer than me, but when we were first around, Boo was the first. You've been around longer. She was the first woman on the microphone in jungle and raves. When I was coming through, there were a few women DJing, but nowhere near as many as there are now. So, like, it was a lot more difficult for us to kind of find our way, make a space, and like keep it there. Keep our foot in the door. We've had to fight for a long time. Just fight against people kind of being quite paternalistic with us, looking down on us, seeing us as kids, kind of infantilizing us a little bit. but we're still here, and it makes what we've done even more worthwhile when we see people like you going clear. Because like we did what we've done to make space, even though we probably didn't realize it at the time, but we were walking so that someone like you could run so the next generation can fly. And it's really incredible to see what you've done and what you're doing for other people, and it's always about kind of paying it forward. So we wouldn't have got to where we've got without people helping us. And I'd like to make a point of saying that all of my big breaks in the music industry were via women. So whether that was being given a job in a record shop, a woman called Sherry, getting on One Extra, that was a woman called Rachel, being brought into Metalheads, Chemistry and Storm. Yeah, just women all the way. My first agent was a woman, Jo Hines, a black woman. Yeah, it's just been women like helping me along the way, so
Thank
I had
you.
to do that as well.
Thank you very much to DJ Flight for everything. Amazing. That's the end of our chat, unfortunately.
That's it.
Yeah, we would have had some questions, but feel free to come and find us. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherelle.